Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Kris Ashley. As usual, we explore the intersection between personal development, spirituality, and science. I'm excited for my guest today. She's going to be a weight loss coach. We'll talk all about that. But first, couple quick announcements. Head to the links in the show notes. You'll be able to find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It was endorsed by 3 experts from The Secret: Michael Beckwith, Bob Doyle, Marcy Shimoff. It was also endorsed by John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Anita Moorjani, tons of others in the spiritual and personal development space. You'll also find links to my free workshops, my courses, and more. So please get in touch, help build this community. Let's help spread more light onto the planet. Hi, I'm Kris. When I was younger, I went through trauma that caused me to feel broken and lost. But my life changed after I had a spiritual awakening. Since then, I've dedicated my life to studying and learning from masters all around the world that have helped me to create a life of fulfillment and abundance beyond my wildest dreams. Now I'm dedicated to sharing everything I've learned so that you don't have to suffer for decades like I did. I've seen people's lives completely transform, and I share it all right here. All right, so I'm very excited for my guest today. With me, I have Jaylin Knight. So Jaylin is a weight loss mindset coach, helping women to finally lose the weight for good without dieting. She uses her unique mindset mastery method, which focuses on using mental fitness to get to the root cause of why women are struggling to lose weight, rather than focusing on conventional methods like calorie counting. And these methods are proven to have longer-term results, all while making women feel positive about themselves beyond the number that's showing up on the scale. So welcome, Jaylin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on today. So I'd like to start with your origin story, which is how I start with all my guests. And I know when we talked a little bit before, you and I had a quick little brief call before, we were talking a lot about the law of attraction. So I'm hoping we'll get to talk about that a lot today as well. So if you want to tell what your origin story is, what led to your spiritual awakening, what led you on this path in the first place?
Certainly. So mine was sort of as a weight loss coach, mine started with wanting to lose weight or just change my body, never really being satisfied with my body. And that had gone on for as long as I can remember, definitely my teenage years. And I struggled for probably over a decade. I found the law of attraction somewhere in my mid to late 20s. And that significantly shifted the way that I pursued things and the way that I took care of my life. It took me a little bit longer to actually use that into my own weight loss journey. But once I did, it absolutely changed everything and it's made it so much easier for me to just live I want to say free. I just feel so much freer than when I was trying to lose weight and trying to diet and sort of trying to hate my body into changing. And so I absolutely love the law of attraction and I love energy. But as you said, want to spread light into the world. Not everybody is ready to receive that message, it feels like. And so I've now gotten into a sort of hybrid where I can still help people with the energy and the mindset of things, but also back it up with science, which I absolutely love.
Awesome. So how much weight did you end up losing yourself?
Of course, I yo-yoed a bit, but I was 20 pounds heavier at my heaviest. And so I
Okay, right
felt
on.
the whole time.
So
Well,
how did the law of attraction and all this energy work help you lose the weight?
very much about you can't get a positive outcome from a negative situation. And so, as much as I was applying law of attraction to my life, I wasn't applying it directly to this. And so, I was still trying to sort of force my body into doing things and hating the situation that I was in, and all the all the opposites of the recommendations for attracting the results that you want in your life to come into you. And so, it wasn't until I kind of failed at all those things that I relaxed back into sort of accepting and trying it this other way and allowing things to change for me. And that's when they did.
Okay, so you mentioned that everything is science backed. And as my listeners know, I love backing everything up with science. So tell me a little bit about how the law of attraction is backed up by science.
Yeah. So one of my law of attraction teachers is Abraham Hicks. Are you familiar with them?
Of course.
Yeah. And so they have an emotional scale for your listeners if they're not familiar. Their emotional scale basically shows 22 different emotions, and sort of the low end of the scale is the low vibrations and like fear and grief. And then the high end of the scale is the high vibrations like love and appreciation. Well, in the science, they've shown that negative emotions and positive emotions actually activate in two different areas of your brain. And so when you activate in the negative emotions, you only have access to other emotions that are in that area. So that's why it's so hard to get out of that negative thinking spiral. Similarly, if you're already in that positive state, then you can see more positive emotions, you activate more positive emotions, and you keep getting more positive momentum. And so they've noticed that with science, they can see it on functional MRI machines that that's literally how our brains light up. And so it explains so much about how we keep attracting negative thoughts upon negative thoughts or positive thoughts upon positive thoughts.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I love that science and even like brain scans are starting to back up what all of these spiritual teachers have said for a long, long time. So you told me that you help people who can't commit to meditating for longer than 2 minutes using this science-based algorithm. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's a systematic framework called positive intelligence, and one of the pieces that they use is called PQ reps. And it's kind of like if you're doing reps to strengthen your body in the gym, you're doing reps to strengthen your mind. And so we're actually just building the self command of our mind. But rather than to ask you to sit down and be quiet and try to clear your mind for 15 minutes, which a lot of people find really inaccessible, these can be done in as quick as 10 seconds. And it's not just about sitting still, but it's about getting into any of your five senses. So, sight, touch, hearing, taste, smell, anything that just takes you into the present moment, into your senses for 10 seconds is enough, as they said, backed it up with science. It's enough to pause that impulse that, like, if you're in a negative thought spiral, it's enough to pause that. So you have an opportunity to choose something that feels better. You can choose either a neutral or positive thought, but you could change the way that you're feeling from that.
So is this something that you do when you feel a negative thought come up?
Both. So kind of back to the lifting weights. So you don't only want to lift weights when you're like having a weak moment, say, like having a negative thoughts that come up. So you still want to practice this in your daily times. And so we actually recommend kind of taking 2 minutes out every couple of hours, especially when you're getting started, to like really build this muscle up. And then so you practice it then so that you think about it when you went and go into that negative spiral. And then when you do have that negative thought pattern, you can do this to snap out of it much quicker.
Yeah, so it's like it's literally muscle memory that you're building. So, I often ask people on the show to do little examples for our
Yeah.
audience. So I'd love for you to walk listeners through one.
Yeah. So, like I said, you can do this with any of your senses, anytime, anywhere. But a really accessible one is just taking two fingertips, so like your thumb and your index finger, and rub your fingertips together ever so slightly and just really notice the sensations. Like it's so simple. But if you just focus on the sensations where you can feel your fingertips, it's enough to get completely into the present moment and take your mind off of whatever was stressing you out at that time.
So it's really kind of a mindfulness activity
Very much so.
more than like, but it's training you to be able to meditate is the ultimate goal.
Not necessarily. It's a little bit of an alternative to meditation. I mean, meditation is a form of PQ reps, in a longer sense. But you can PQ rep for as long as you want. It's just nice that you can do it in as quick as 10 seconds. And the idea here is that it's so helpful to keep breaking yourself up from the day, because even when you have a meditation practice, let's say you meditate 15 minutes, even an hour every day, then you have that hour, but then you come back into your regular day. I know I was stuck in this for a long time, that I had my meditation practice, which I still have, because it feels good to me. But I would go off and meditate for 15 minutes and then come and get caught up in the chaos of the day and sort of completely forget that mind that I had during meditation. Whereas this is practical in the middle of your day. You can take 10 seconds, 2 minutes out at a time and like keep refocusing on the present.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. So how have you seen that help assist people's weight loss journeys?
Yeah. So one of the things with weight loss journeys, and again, it's all about coming back to the mindfulness and really getting out of that negative spiral. Like there's so much shame and negativity around people that want to lose weight and that they put weight on and things like that. And so just really getting them back into the mindfulness piece of it. So the program itself is teaching them the mindfulness. And then like I said, I use these PQ reps, one to build strengthen their mental fitness, but in a practical sense, whenever they're having those the cravings or just the shame, whether it's preventative and they have the cravings and they can do PQ reps and come into the present and choose something else, or if they already ate and they're having the shame afterwards and then they can get that shame spiral that may lead to a binge, that sort of thing. They could do PQ reps to just pull themselves out of it, pull back into the present moment, and choose a better feeling thought.
I really like that. And I know you were also talking to me earlier about how there's two sides of the brain. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there's one region that we call the survival region, and that's where it gets activated whenever you have a negative emotion. So it's the brainstem, limbic system, parts of the left brain, and then there's an entirely other region that we call the thriving region, and that's the middle prefrontal cortex and the right side of the brain. But each of these regions get activated, not individually entirely, but one more, very much more so when the negative thoughts are happening, and one very much more when the positive thoughts are happening.
And how do you incorporate that science into your coaching?
So that really explains so much about one, that when you are in a negative space, why you continue to be in a negative space and why it's so hard to break out of that, especially when you're working on your own. And so it can be very, very beneficial to have somebody help you get out of that space and become more mindful. And then also it's the reason that we do the PQ reps to train you out of the automatic negative thinking. So the more you practice the PQ reps and practice choosing a better thought, then you can turn these automatic thoughts into more positive ones. And that's going to lead you into just having a more general positive mindset to handle life's challenges as you go.
Yeah, totally. So when you are working with your clients, do you notice that people need to use the PQ reps more around the shame of wanting to lose weight or around the shame of binge eating, or like where are you seeing them like really needing to use these tools?
Yeah, it's definitely individual, but I would say it's so much more holistic because like the food is always just a symptom, right? So it's generally about getting them out of whatever other pieces. And backing up a little bit, the entire framework shows that there are 10 different, we call them saboteurs, but different sort of negative umbrellas of different thought patterns. And so there's the pleaser and the hyperachiever and the judge. And so it's these thoughts, and people generally have a couple of these that kind of dominate their mind, and they show up everywhere. So they show up at work, they show up in their families, they show up in life, they show up in traffic, and kind of pulling them back from these negative thought spirals so that they're not always so stressed out and not looking for some other reason to make themselves feel better, but they're already naturally feeling better to begin with. And then they don't need the food to make them feel better.
Where do you think all that stems from?
So the saboteurs I was talking about, that's actually it's a natural development from our childhood, and they come in a way to protect us from perceived or very real dangers that we have as a child, but we don't need them anymore as an adult, and so they turn into more self-sabotage. But one that everybody can relate to and everybody has it is the judge, the inner critic, that voice that's always going to point out and amplify any errors that you've ever made. And so, and the other ones kind of, because we all have that self judgment, then we build up an avoider. Like, I want to avoid this thing so I don't feel the judging from it.
So, do you find that once you help people, you do the PQ exercises, you're helping people recognize these saboteurs, right? Which is probably the first step, because a lot of people are probably unconsciously running these programs. How quickly does the weight loss follow all of this? Is there any other steps within that? Or do you find that simply by bringing all of this to light, sharing the knowledge with people, that major shifts start to happen?
So there's one more key to the framework, and so that we recognize that there's a negative thought patterns, building our self command so that we can shift from negative to positive, and then also recognizing that we have positive thought patterns too. We refer to that as a sage. And so your sage is your inner wisdom and your intuition. And so really building that up. And that's the area with empathy and curiosity and gets you to activate and actually put things into action. So once we really build that up, and that's who you really are, right? Just getting you back to who you were before all that negativity felt so normal to you. Once we build that up, then we add the strategies. So there's very much a mindset part of it, and then a real life strategy part of it about how you're feeding yourself, listening to your hunger cues, listening to your intuition, knowing when to eat, what to eat, those kinds of things, and we build that on top of it.
So there seems to be a really big shift in our society with a body positivity movement right now, right?
Mhm.
Where it's almost like the tables have been turned, where now you get I don't know if like glorified is the right word, but you certainly get rewarded on social media for being more overweight, right? And sometimes you get shamed for losing weight. So how have you seen that affecting your clients or your work?
I haven't actually seen that in my clients. I definitely see it on social media. It's prevalent. I don't think that I'm attracting the clients that are buying into that, I guess, necessarily. We are very much a do what makes you feel best, right? So if being a certain size makes you feel best, do that. If eating a certain way makes you feel best, do that. But for sure, everybody that comes to me because they are not happy, not just in their size, but they're not happy with the way they're treating themselves.
Yeah. So tell me more about how are they treating themselves? What is your typical client?
So typically a client is stressed out over for work, over family relationship, over demands. So many people come as people pleasers, so they're constantly giving away their energy and themselves and their time. And then they need me time and they need something to fill their cup back up. And the easiest, simplest thing that they can do and the thing that they are practiced at is eating. And so they constantly eat, but they're not even enjoying it. Again, they're just trying to handle stress, which doesn't feel good, and they're eating that doesn't feel good, and then they're putting on weight and that doesn't feel good, and then they can't move their body and that doesn't feel good. So all of these things come together and they're just not feeling good about it. So it's not like they're parading around like I'm bigger and beautiful, which absolutely no argument. Whoever feels great about whatever body they're in, I'm all for. But that's not the people coming to me. They're not happy with the way that they're treating themselves, not happy with the way that their life is going. And I think what really speaks to them is that my program is so holistic. It's not just about eat these things, move this way, lose this weight. It's about changing your life so that you genuinely feel happy. And then once you feel happy and positive, then you want to do these things that are also going to take the weight off.
And how does it touch the other areas of their life?
Like I said, it's because it gets to the root cause, it's so holistic. So if they're a people pleaser, then they're going to learn how to set up boundaries and take their power back and say no sometimes. And again, it happens so organically because they're just learning that it's okay for them to n- not feel that they have to do things that they don't want to do, or they don't have to try to please somebody just to get validation for themselves. They can self validate, right? And they learn to have empathy for themselves so that if they're tired and they don't want to do something, it's okay to sit down and take a rest and they deserve that. They don't have to make excuses. They don't have to go eat something just so they have a reason to sit down. So it extends out into their entire world. And like so many people are able to stand up to injustices going on in the workplace and to empower their kids to start doing more chores and just thinking of a couple of examples off the top of my head about different things that have gone on with my clients, but just really taking back their power so that they don't have to substitute what is already theirs. Like they deserve to have that energy. They deserve to say yes when they want to and no when they don't want to. And once they recognize that they are worthy of making those decisions, it's so much easier for them to do that. And then they don't have to compensate it through eating.
So it's kind of that when you said injustices in the workplace, that stood out to me because that's not what I expected you to say. But I'm assuming you're saying it because they were being treated unfairly because they were such a people pleaser. So they were probably taken advantage of to some extent, right? They're not out there becoming social justice warriors just because they lost
Yeah,
weight.
no, no, very
Right?
much a personal justice warrior. But
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
That's
That
cool.
people just put more. more demands on them, ask them to be the ones to stay later, ask them to pick up the slack for somebody else, and they always would.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've always heard that people pleasing is a trauma response, right? That's something that goes deep to their childhood where they weren't, I don't know, maybe getting the love that they needed or the affection they needed, or something was going on where they felt like they had to really put themselves out there in order to get their needs met.
Yeah, and so saboteurs develop whether there's trauma or not, but people definitely lean towards different saboteurs based on what they needed in their childhood. So there's definitely a correlation there where people that weren't getting their needs met or weren't getting the attention that they wanted would go above and beyond to get that attention.
Yeah. So, do you think that all people who are struggling with weight issues, it all stems back to one of these saboteurs that you were talking about?
According to the framework and the research, and that they've done extensive research, over 500,000 people have participated. But everything stems back to the saboteurs. So all of the negative emotions in the world, they've done this radical simplification where they can narrow down to these 10 different saboteurs. And so every negative emotion you have, or everything that's driving you in a negative way, can lead back to one of these saboteurs.
So this isn't your framework; it's someone else's. Oh, I
Absolutely.
thought it was yours. Okay.
Oh, no, I'm
So
sorry.
who
No,
who who created it?
this is positive intelligence. Shirzad Shamin created it. I
Okay.
teach.
Okay. So what are the 10 saboteurs?
So the judge is the universal saboteur. Everybody has that. And then there's hyperachiever, hyper rational, and hyper vigilant, which each of those things, achiever, rational, and vigilant, are beautiful things. But saboteurs are using your strengths to, they're overusing them to a point that's not helpful for you anymore. And there's a stickler, an avoider, pleaser, victim. Where am I at 7? Well, got me off the top of my head here. I'm missing 2 off the top of my head right now. I know for myself, I am the hyperachiever, the stickler, and controller. That's one that I missed. And so those are things where, like, an achiever is fantastic. An achiever is driven and feels good about what they're doing. A hyperachiever, when it gets out of balance, like, can't feel good enough, right? Always achieving to the next level and nothing is ever good enough, kind of thing. So when I came into this work, that was something that I was dealing with. And this work has helped me balance that out so much so that I can appreciate the fact that I'm driven and motivated and want to do my best. But I can also accept that what I'm putting out there is good enough. And I don't have to continuously criticize that it should have been better.
Yeah, and I imagine that if you're in that overachieving state, you're not focusing on your health as much, right? Because you're just you're driving, you're just trying to get stuff done. You're probably just like grabbing whatever meals on the go, and that kind of feeds into the whole weight gain thing. So are there certain saboteurs that you've seen more connected with weight gain or just weight issues in general?
For sure. I definitely see a lot. Like I said, the pleaser shows up a lot. Everybody has the judge, and then so everybody has the judge as universal. And then generally, there's 3 other of these accomplice saboteurs, the other 9. And so the hyperachiever shows up a lot, the stickler, like just needing to have everything kind of in its place, sort of on the OCD sort of spectrum. But really the controller, those are things that I have, the avoider, really trying to avoid feelings, that shows up quite a bit. Avoid is something else that you need to do. And so you use this as a buffer in between those things.
That makes sense. I could see that if you're trying to avoid your feelings, for example, or avoid some emotions that you might have repressed. So you said one that caught my eye also, and or caught my ear. That's the victim. And I
Mhm.
do a lot of work on this podcast and on my social media and in my book to try to empower people out of victimhood,
Mhm.
because I don't believe that, first of all, it feels very trendy to be a victim these days, especially on social media, right? There's a lot of perceived payoffs people get from being a victim. And maybe they don't deal with it with eating, but they get a lot of praise, they get a lot of attention, they get a lot of pity, they get to be the martyr, but they also get to avoid stepping into their power and taking accountability and responsibility for their own healing, right? So talk to me a little bit more about the victim saboteur inside of this framework.
Yeah, so the victim saboteur is just sort of that what was me, right? And why is this happening to me? Like you said, doesn't really take responsibility for their feelings, for their emotions, for what's going on in their life. And so really helping them recognize that they do have the abilities, like again, using the PQFs to pull out of that position and show them that their sage is all powerful and all knowing. And another thing with the saboteurs is that they kind of give breadcrumbs instead of the whole loaf of bread. So as you said, there's some payoff to the victimhood thing and going on social media, that kind of thing. And a lot of these things come with some breadcrumbs. Like a lot of the high powered, higher achieving people, they're like, I need my hyperachiever, or else I'm not going to be CEO and I'm not going to get these accolades. Uh, but so that you can reach some success or you can have some payoff to any of these saboteurs, but nothing compares to the kind of success and payoff and happiness that you're going to get when you connect with your sage and your intuition. And so really teaching them that even if they're getting some benefit from the victim and having those thoughts and living that sort of lifestyle, they're going to get so much more when they connect to their sage.
And how do you gently teach people how to step into sage mode and out of victimhood mode specifically?
Yeah, so I'm very happy that I have the systematic framework and that helps. It's an app-based system. And so they go through kind of lessons throughout the week and kind of keep coming back. So they take those 2-minute mindfulness breaks throughout the day to build their self-command and to teach them into getting into that positive mindset. And so within that framework, it's a very natural progression that they become aware. And as they become aware and they recognize that, sure, I'm getting a little bit from this, but there's so much more that I could be getting. So that awareness really motivates them to follow through with the program. And then between the program and the coaching, that they recognize so much more about who they really are and how much they are actually limiting themselves from letting the saboteurs run their mind, even if that's familiar. But they can, it's it's a safe progression way to go through the unfamiliar to get back to who they really are.
It almost makes me think of people who are in abusive relationships where they get those little, like, to use your language, breadcrumbs from it, where they get those little pieces of attention or those little pieces of affection, maybe even if it's negative attention, but they're getting something,
Mhm.
versus breaking free of that and finding a really healthy relationship or even a healthy relationship with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how does the law of attraction play into helping people make the journey from saboteur to sage?
So a couple of things with the law of attraction is that so the emotional scale I love so much because it kind of gives a step by step where you have like a fear based thought and then you have a thought that feels a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. But I was actually just doing the emotional scale the other day and I do them quite a bit and it still takes probably 30 minutes to like write down through all those thoughts. What I love about this program is that so many times when you're in that negative thought space, it's so hard to think your way out of it. Like I said, you're just thinking other negative thoughts while you're in there. But the PQ reps actually give you a chance to break that and get into your body for a moment so that you can sort of put a stop to that and then have the ability to choose something different. And so it's just a much more practical way of applying the law of attraction where you want to get away from the negative thoughts that are very low vibration and just don't feel good to you and into spaces that feel so much better. And then when you're in those positive spaces, that's when you have access to that clarity and you're able to make future decisions and planning, and you have access to your empathy and curiosity. And so all of those things just allow you to choose the life that you actually want to have. So from Abraham's perspective, it's more about it's about attracting it into the world, and I'm still fully believe that. But I love that it's backed up in science too about explaining that when you are in your middle prefrontal cortex using those positive emotions, that you are able to think and focus and see more clearly the different opportunities that are going to create the life that you actually want to choose.
I think that's beautiful. Any other final thoughts that you want to leave people with? Anything that we didn't cover that you feel like listeners would really benefit from?
I think just simplifying it back to that mindfulness is always going to help you get from a negative space to a more positive space, and however you can do that in a way that fits into your lifestyle. And that's why I love these PQ reps, because as simple as 10 seconds is enough to help you focus into the present. And of course, the more often you do them, the more often you practice, then one, you don't need them as much because you've already practiced those positive mindsets, so that you're not automatically going to the negative. But when you do need it, that it's completely accessible to you, and there's an infinite number of ways that you can do it. It's just 10 seconds using any of your senses.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's so important to be in the present moment, because when we're living in the past, we're just living out our own anger and our own low vibration emotions and our own traumas, right? And then when we're in the past, or when we're in the future, it's all about our anxieties and our fears, and we just let these emotions overcome us. And then we're always we're conscious creators. We're always creating, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Right.
And we're going to be creating more situations in our lives that make us feel those emotions, right? Unless we're really, uh, really aware of them.
Yeah. And so, but what I love so much about this is it really shows with that muscle memory, as we talked about, that you can change your automatic thought process to have a more positive thought, so that when you encounter the same situation, say over and over, like using traffic a lot, because who hasn't experienced road rage? I don't know anyone, but you can be in that same situation, a habitual situation, and then continuously teach yourself to have a positive response to it. And that's just an example of how well you can train to have a positive and in the moment and present response to that. You can do it for absolutely anything.
And that's how you know that you've really healed something, right? When you're encountering that same triggering situation, but you're not having that extreme emotional reaction to it anymore.
Exactly. It doesn't have the negative response anymore.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jaylin.
Thank
It's been
you.
so enlightening, and I appreciate you sharing all of the science that backs all of this. I learned a lot today. Can you tell listeners how they can get in touch with you if they want to work with you, where they can find you, what your offers are, all the good stuff?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And so I am very active on Instagram at I am Jaylin Knight, and I also have a website called Boutique Fitness, BOOTIQE fitness.com. I do a weight loss mindset mastery, both group and one-to-one coaching, as well as fitness training as well. So that's my original background.
Awesome. And all those links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for everyone listening. Please like, share, subscribe, help spread the good word. Check out my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. Check out all of my courses, my workshops. Check out Jaylin's stuff. And I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.